Hey, what's up people? Many of you must be familiar with devices like these you may have seen at your home or at your friend's place. Well, these are known as the Wi-Fi routers. You must have also seen devices such as these USB hubs as well as these switches. Well, today in this video we'll not be talking about any of these USB hubs or these electrical switches. Whichever device I will be referring to today, these are all networking devices. If you visit any industrial sector or in big industries, they use some similar looking devices, but they are categorized under routers, switches and hubs. Let me clear out quickly how these three are different in the functionality. Talking about hubs at first. What does this USB hub do basically? It basically connects multiple devices together from one single source. That is, it takes only one single source of USB power and provides it to multiple devices. Similar is the case with a networking hub. It has multiple ports in which many networking devices connect. When I am talking about networking devices, I am referring to PCs, laptops, any device which is capable of communicating with some other device. So a hub is basically used to connect multiple networking devices. Now this hub is quite foolish. It does not have any brain, it does not have any memory, it cannot remember anything. All it does is just connecting the devices. It cannot identify which device is connected to which port of it. A hub may have 8 ports, 16 ports, 24 ports or more than that. And when I'm talking about identifying devices, I am referring to MAC addresses. MAC addresses are basically physical addresses which are unique to every device. With the MAC address we can identify the device. You know, the name of a person is similar to the MAC address of a device. But hubs, unfortunately, they didn't go to school, so they didn't know how to memorize the MAC address of the devices. So whenever multiple devices are connected to the hub, all that the hub knows is that it has some connections made to itself. So suppose there are 5 devices connected to a hub and device number 1 wants to communicate to device number 3, suppose. So it sends a data packet which has the destination MAC address of the device number 3. It sends the data packet to the hub and hub cannot read the MAC address. As I said, hub did not go to school, so it cannot read what is the destination MAC address. So what it does, it receives the packet and it broadcasts the packet to all the devices connected to it. If there are a total of 5 devices connected, the hub will receive the packet from the device number 1 and it will broadcast to all other ports, all of the 4 devices. And then it is the responsibility of the device to identify if the data packet is intended for him or it is meant for someone else. If the data packet is not meant for the device, it will simply reject the data packet. Now here the question comes about security. A hub simply sends the data packet to all other devices, so it is not secure, right? The data can be breached with by any intruder which has connected its device to the hub. So every other device knows what the information is being shared with the other devices. So here we sent the hub to school, it learned something and now it has become a bit intelligent. So here the hubs are converted to switches after going to school. So now the switches have a brain, they have a memory, they can remember the names of the devices, that means they can remember the MAC addresses of the devices, they can identify which device is connected to which port and which device wants to communicate with which specific device. A switch is just adding a memory to the hub. So a switch basically maintains a MAC table in which it has all the information of the MAC address and the device with that specific MAC address is connected to which port number of the switch. So whenever there are multiple devices connected to a switch, if a device wants to communicate to one specific device, it will send the data packet having the specific MAC address of the destination device to the switch. The switch will see in the header file of the data packet that this data packet is meant for which specific MAC address, and then it will scan through its MAC table and see, okay, this MAC address is connected to my port number something, and then it will just forward the data packet to that specific port and not to all other devices, just like the hub did. So a switch is basically capable of unicasting and multicasting. Unicast is sending one-to-one data from one device to one specific device, and multicasting is sending from one device to multiple devices, and those multiple devices are specified. It is not all devices. Hub used to send the data to all devices, and that is known as broadcasting. So now the question arises, how does the switch learn the MAC addresses of the devices? Suppose I bought a new switch from the market and I connected multiple devices to the switch. So how will it learn? So the switch basically at the first attempt it broadcasts a packet, and in that packet it asks for all the devices to give the switch its MAC address. So all the devices get the broadcast packets, and in response they supply the MAC address to the switch, and like this it builds up its MAC table. Now there is also another type of switch which is known as the manageable switches, and these switches are capable of remembering the MAC address, and in addition to that they can also remember the IP address of the device. In a bit later I'll be covering the use of IP addresses. And even in a manageable switch you have the capability of port mirroring, which is basically used for network monitoring by any network administrator. And port mirroring is basically maintaining a check over the communication going between the devices connected to the switch. That is, whatever data is being transferred from one device to another, the copy of the data will be transferred to the device connected to the mirrored port, and that device will be the network administrator's device. So now imagine a business organization, and in a business organization or maybe in your school computer lab, we require only the devices to communicate within themselves. We do not require our devices to communicate outside our building, outside our organization. In that case, a switch will solve the purpose. In that case, we only require the MAC address of the devices to communicate within themselves. But when the requirement comes that we want to communicate to the outside world, the outer world, to some another organization or maybe to some another branch, then we require an IP address. That is, we are accessing outside our network. Within our building or within our organization, the device is connected, it is forming a small network, local network, that is inside our building, inside our organization. Now when we are wishing to communicate with the outer world, then we have to switch over our network. That is, we have to communicate to a different network. In that case, it is a must to have an IP address. And this work of communicating with the outer network, with some another network, different networks, using an IP address is done by the routers. So our router basically is capable of remembering IP addresses and not MAC addresses. A router is used for routing data packets to outside our network to a different network for communication between different networks. A router, just like a switch, maintains a routing table, and that in that table it contains the IP addresses of various networks, and this routing table can be formed statically by the network administrator, or the router dynamically forms its IP address just in like a switch formed. So the router basically keeps on building up its routing table with time. Whenever it gets some new network in the outer world, it just adds that IP address of the network to its routing table. So a routing table contains all the IP addresses which are required for communicating. Like suppose we want to send a data packet from our organization to a different organization, so in that case the router must know to the IP address to which the data packet has to be sent. So that IP address is stored in the routing table. So this was the basic difference between a hub, switch and a router. All these three devices look similar, they are just alike, but they have different purposes. If you do not need to communicate outside your network, you do not need a router. A switch will serve the purpose. And one more important thing to note is that a router does not have multiple ports. They have very limited amount of ports, limited number of ports, and a switch can have multiple number of ports because in a switch we basically connect devices. Okay, so now that you have got the concept of a switch, a hub and a router, then I think it will be easy for you to analyze this Wi-Fi router inside your home. Let us quickly analyze this Wi-Fi router, and why do we call it a router and not a switch and not a hub? Well, it would be quite interesting for you to know that this Wi-Fi router is a combination of a router and a switch. Yes, this is quite advanced, and these are only used for domestic purposes. Let me quickly explain you. Inside the router you have this blue port that is known as the WAN port, and the network cable goes inside this port, and through this port the data packets we can communicate to the outer world. If we disconnect this port, our connection to the outer world is just disconnected. This is the port capable of remembering the IP address of our network and various other networks in the outer world. And the yellow ports which we see, and in these ports we basically connect our PCs or laptops this is a LAN port. There are 4 LAN ports, and this is a switch. So if you disconnect this WAN port, you can still communicate within the devices that are connected to these yellow ports. And these Wi-Fi, the wireless, this Wi-Fi is again a different switch. This is a wireless switch. You know, a Wi-Fi router has a maximum capability of connecting maybe for 5 for some routers, 10 for some other routers, and even more than that. So what is this basically doing? This is basically connecting various devices, right? It's connecting various devices, and once you open your Wi-Fi router settings in your web browser and just browse over to the wireless settings, and even if you turn on your hotspot from your mobile phone and go to the wireless settings and see the devices connected, you will notice that the router or your mobile is identifying the connected devices by displaying their MAC addresses and not their IP addresses. In that connected devices, it is not mentioning that this IP address device is being connected. It is there that this MAC address is connected. So that is again a switch. If you disconnect this WAN port, if you disconnect your mobile data, then still you can communicate within the devices, just like you use your Xender or Share-it to share various files within the network which you form by connecting various devices to the hotspot. It is just like that, a switch working. So this Wi-Fi router is basically having a router which is connecting your home network to the outside world, and a switch and 2 switches, basically one LAN switch and one wireless switch, and all these things are interconnected inside this router. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope this video was quite informative for you. If this video helped you in gaining some interesting information about the various routers and switches and the difference between them which are used in the corporate sectors or industries, then make sure to give this video a thumbs up and also share it with your friends. So before leaving, make sure you subscribe to the channel and also press the bell icon beside it, as I'll be very soon bringing some more interesting videos like these. See you in my next video. Till then, goodbye.